Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Bookalicious. I'm so happy to have you here with me, and I'm so excited to talk about all of the 11 books that I read in the month of May. 11 books is a really good number for me because typically I might read 7 or 8 books a month, but 11 books is just crazy for me. So I'm very happy to have read 11 books, and I found some incredible books, some 5-star reads, a 6-star read, my very first 6-star read of the year, and I just cannot wait to discuss all of these books with you. So let us get right into the video. The very first book that I picked up in the month of May was Beach Read by Emily Henry. If you have been around on my Instagram for a while, which is Rosie's Book World on Instagram, you would know that I am not particularly an Emily Henry fan. I have a very complicated history with her books because in 2022 I tried to read Beach Read. I tried and I got so far into it, like 60%, and then I just DNF'd it because I was so bored and I just didn't connect with the characters or the romance or anything in this book. And then I tried to read Book Lovers later in 2022 and DNF'd that as well. So I just have not had a very good track record with Emily Henry, but I really want to read all of her books this year, and I just want to give her a chance as an author. I just want to see if maybe my reading tastes have changed. And my reading taste definitely changed with Beach Read because I gave this book 4 stars and I just had such a good time with it. It's not like a favorite book of all time, and it's not like my favorite romance book ever or anything like that. But at the same time, the writing style was just so much more enjoyable when I was reading it this time, and I really did enjoy the characters so much more. I really enjoyed January. I really enjoyed and appreciated Gus as well. And this book is basically about 2 writers who kind of knew each other in college. They were rivals in college, and they both have very different writing styles. January, our main character, writes a lot of romantic literary women's fiction, and Gus kind of writes like serious, like gritty dark thrillers, something like that. I don't know, I can't remember, but basically they just have very different writing styles. And so for the summer, they kind of challenge each other to write a book in the other person's genre. So January has to try and write a book that's kind of like got mystery elements, and then Gus has to write a book that's more romantic and optimistic. And Gus and January both have a very different outlook on romance in real life. Gus is very cynical about romance, and we definitely get to see why as the book goes on. And January is a hopeless romantic, and so you kind of get to see them connect and see them kind of start a friendship and then see that friendship blossom into something more over the summer. And I just had a really fun time with this book. A lot of moments in it were just written so beautifully, and there's a scene, I don't want to spoil it, but basically they go camping and they have this very deep conversation that made me super teary-eyed for sure. And it doesn't even matter that they're not like a top favorite couple of mine, or that Gus isn't like a top book boyfriend of mine. I did enjoy the characters for what they were, and I'm very excited to read more of Emily Henry's books, and I'm so happy that I gave Beach Read a second chance. The second book that I picked up was yet again another romance. I picked up Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams, and this is the second book in like a little small town interconnected series. The first book was When in Rome. I really loved that book. I gave it 4.5 stars, and this one follows a side character from When in Rome. It follows Annie, who is the younger sister of a main character from When in Rome, and she's kind of known around town as this super sweet, super shy, goody two-shoes. And lately she's been thinking about wanting to find someone to settle down with, but she's kind of not the best person when it comes to dating. Like, she can be very awkward and just super shy and doesn't really know what to talk about on dates. And so she enlists the help of one of her friend's bodyguards, and he is, very experienced in dating, and so he agrees to teach Annie how to be more comfortable on dates. And eventually you just kind of see this really lovely romance blossom between the two of them, even though they are opposites in every single way. And it was super cute. I definitely enjoyed it. I will say that this is probably my least favorite book by Sarah Adams so far. I really loved The Cheat Sheet and When in Rome by her, but this one, it was still really cute. I gave it 4 stars. It was very good, but it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't change my life, if that makes any sense. Like, it just wasn't like the best romance I've ever read in my entire life. Some parts felt a little insta lovey, which I hate that trope. It's not like they were instantly in love, but they were just both just super into each other, like right away. It seemed like, it felt like, why aren't you guys dating when I already know that you guys like each other? Like, just date already. Don't wait until page 200. Like, you guys clearly are already head over heels for each other. That's how I kind of felt. But I definitely really enjoyed the characters. They were very much opposites, but I really do enjoy that trope. And I really did connect with Annie as a character, and the book definitely had some very funny moments as well. I really loved the whole small town element. I loved Annie's sisters. I think they're going to each get their own book, which I'm very excited for because I do enjoy those characters. And just this whole little small town where everyone is so nosy, and it's just very fun to read about. And I'm very excited to read the next book in this series. But yeah, this book was pretty good. There's no spice, which is kind of like Sarah Adams' trademark, even though I know that some of her books do have tiny amounts of spice. There's no spice in this one, but things definitely get a little bit more steamy. So I would still recommend it if you are a no spice girly, but just be aware of it. It does get talked about a lot more in this book. The third book that I picked up was King of Sloth by Anne Huang, and this is the fourth book in the Kings of Sin series, which is a series that I'm having a lot of fun with. And I just always love an Anna Huang book. I feel like you always know what type of romance you're gonna get, and you're always gonna get like kind of similar characters, but it's always a fun time. Like, I will always read her books, and she just has a very fun writing style in romance. And it follows two characters named Sloane and Xavier. Sloane is Xavier's publicist, and Xavier is kind of like this rich celebrity party boy, and him and Sloane are totally opposites in every way. Like, Xavier is super goofy and he has golden retriever energy, and Sloane definitely has black cat energy, and she's super, like, I don't want to say the word icy, but she is a little bit icy. And she just, she doesn't really open up to a lot of people, but you definitely get to see why once you get further into the book. And eventually, Xavier and Sloane kind of find themselves in this cute little relationship. And it was just really fun to see these characters fall in love and to see some of their personal struggles outside of the relationship as well. I totally loved Sloane as a character. Like, she's been making little appearances ever since the very first book in the Kings of Sin series, and I just always loved her character. I always loved how she kind of roasted rom-coms, even though I love rom-coms, but I always found it funny how she would hate to watch rom-coms and jot down notes about why she hated the movies. And I just really always enjoyed her character, and so it was great to see her get her own story. Xavier was super fun. He wasn't anything super special, but I still enjoyed him as a character. And yeah, this was just another cute little quick Anna Huang rom-com, and I'm very excited for the next book in this series. The next book that I picked up in May was Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. And I know what you're thinking. I know that you are probably thinking, why in the world is this book 4 stars? Like, did she forget to add the fifth star? What's going on? I understand, and I'm so nervous to talk about this. I don't have anything bad to say, and I obviously cannot talk about, this book in too much detail because it is the last book in this epic series, and I would never forgive myself if I spoiled anything for those of you who have not read it yet. I just, I will say that this book had a lot of different POVs. You know, it had a lot going on, and there were just some POVs that I enjoyed more than others. And I don't know what it is, but sometimes in fantasy books, when a lot of war is going on and a lot of high stakes, sometimes I just zone out and I don't find it as interesting sometimes. So I think that's what was going on, and that's why I didn't give this book a higher rating than 4 stars. But 4 stars is still an amazing rating. Like, the series overall is probably like a 4.5 or 5 star series for me. I love Throne of Glass. I love these characters. I love the main character with all my heart. But I just couldn't give this one 5 stars because I just didn't feel that way about it. But I still absolutely loved it. I think the ending was so powerful and so beautifully written. And I just had such an amazing time with this series overall. I think the main character is one of the best fantasy female main characters of all time. Like, I definitely think she will go down in history as just one of the best ever. And I really loved all of the magical elements that were going on. I loved the Fae. I think there was a lot of good romance subplots that were happening as well. And I highly recommend this series to anyone who's not read it yet. You definitely need to add it to your TBR and you will not be disappointed, especially if you're a big fantasy lover, then you will be obsessed with this series. And I am very sad that it's over. The next book that I picked up was Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole, and I'm not even going to try to say her last name because I'm terrible with last names. But basically, this book is exactly how it sounds. You follow the main character named Evie, and she happens to just stumble into the path of this notorious villain in the middle of the woods. And instead of him killing her, he just takes her back to his headquarters and recruits her as his assistant. And the story just basically goes on from there. And so you basically just follow Evie as she navigates her new job, which she was desperate to take because she has a little sister and a dad who's very ill. So she definitely, you know, really needed a job to be able to take care of her family. And you kind of see her and the villain kind of have this tension between them. You know, he's very grumpy, she's very bubbly, and she's the sunshine, and you just kind of see their whole cute, funny dynamic happen. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was super close to being a 5 star read, but I think once I just read the second book and get to be with these characters for a longer amount of time, I think that I will definitely give the second book 5 stars. If you're looking for a really cute, quick romantasy, then I think you definitely need to read this book. It had such cute little fairy tale vibes. For some reason, the setting of the book almost reminded me of the fairy godmother's potion factory in Shrek 2. I was getting those vibes. I don't know why, but I was. And it just was very morally gray, and I loved the main character. She was so lovable. I loved the villain as well, and their whole dynamic was just super cute to read about. And I just had such a good time with this book, and I'm very happy that I read it. The next book that I picked up was The School for Good and Evil. This is a reread for me. I love this series. I read book one when I was like 10 years old. I mean, I just kind of grew up with this series. It's so nostalgic to me, and I always, you know, think about these characters and these books. And these books are why I love fantasy. Like, they are responsible for why I am a huge fantasy lover. And if you've seen the movie, which, you know, the movie wasn't horrible, but if you have seen the movie and you're thinking that you don't need to read the book, I would still recommend the book because the movie was not an accurate adaptation of what the book is. The book is so much more than what was shown in the movie. And the main plot is basically about these two girls named Agatha and Sophie. Agatha is the one with the dark hair on the cover. Sophie is the one who looks like a princess on the cover. And everyone in their town thinks that Agatha's a witch, and they think that she's going to be taken to go to the school for evil, and they think Sophie is going to be going to the school for good. And once Sophie and Agatha make their way to the school for good and evil, they kind of get their roles reversed. Sophie ends up in the school for evil, and Agatha ends up in the school for good, and both girls are thinking like this is a huge mistake. Like obviously Sophie's a princess, obviously Agatha's a villain, but as the story unravels, you kind of see that maybe they had it wrong all along. And it's such a funny book, and it's just so well written, and the fantasy elements are just so brilliant. Like the way that the school is described is so vivid and just so amazing. And it's just one of my favorite books of all time. I had a blast rereading this. I annotated the whole thing. So I'm very excited to continue my reread with this series and start book 2 sometime in June. The next book that I picked up was a thriller. I picked up The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is my first ever Riley Sager book. And I remember seeing Haley Pham, who we all know and love on Booktube. I remember seeing her just, talking about this book and loving it so much. And so I've always wanted to read this book, and I finally got to it, gave it 5 stars. It was so perfect. It follows our main character named Casey, who is an actress, and she's kind of going through a rough patch in her life right now. So she goes to this house, this lakeside house, and she's just trying to get her life back together, sort things out. And she has some interesting neighbors who she kind of likes to people watch. And eventually, one of her neighbors goes missing, and she is determined to try and figure out what happened. And this book is just so unpredictable. Like when you think you've solved something and you think, oh, this is what's going on, you're totally wrong. And it has so many just surprising elements to it. One of the plot twists just made me so shocked. Like I've never been that shocked before in a thriller book. And it's just so well constructed, and you kind of see all of these little clues that have been left throughout the book as to what the plot twist was. So once I figured out what the plot twist was, I was able to flick back through some chapters and be like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. I should have figured that out, but I didn't. And I just loved the writing style, and I cannot wait to read more books from Riley Sager. I think he's a genius, and I think that he just knows how to make someone shocked. So, absolutely love this book. 5 stars. And if this book is not already on your TBR, then I think you definitely need to add it because it's just so, so good. The next book that we will be discussing is Gild by Raven Kennedy. I gave this book 6 stars. 6 stars. It has been ages since I have found a new 6-star read, and Gild just met every single expectation that I had for it. It exceeded every expectation that I had for it. Like, it was just absolutely perfection. It was better than perfection to me. I just love this book so much. It basically follows our main character named Orin, and she is gold touched. So she is completely golden. She's not like a statue or anything, but her skin, her hair, everything is just gold. And she has been golden touched by this king named King Midas, and she is kind of like his favored. She is his favorite person in the entire palace, and you just kind of get to see where the story goes from there. I know I'm not giving a good description of what happens, but I went into this book pretty blind, so I think you should do the same. There are trigger warnings at the beginning of the book that let you know what to expect because this is a dark fantasy, but regardless of that, like if you can handle like what the trigger warnings are, then you should definitely give this book a try. I just personally found it so addictive. There's something about Raven Kennedy's writing style that just was just so intriguing, and I just hated whenever I had to stop reading the book. Like when I had to go do something else, I would just constantly be trying to get back to reading this book, and it just consumed me. The main character is probably one of, if not my most favorite characters I've ever read in my entire life. Like there's just something about her that I found really endearing, really beautiful. I just loved her character, and I just loved the story. I think it was so adventurous, and for a fantasy book, it was just really easy for me to keep up with everything that was happening. So if you're not a big fantasy reader, or if you're trying to get into fantasy, I would recommend this because it's super easy to understand. There's no like super complicated political aspects of the book. And I just love it with all my heart. And I'm currently going to be reading book 3 soon. I already read book 2 at the beginning of June, and I just am obsessed with this series. It has consumed me, and I'm so happy that I have finally started this series. The next book I picked up was Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. I'm hoping I said that right. And this is a witch and witch hunter, enemies to lovers, romantasy. It follows our two main characters named Lou, who is the witch, and then Reed, who is a witch hunter, and their paths cross and they absolutely hate each other, but something happens where they are both forced to enter into an arranged marriage. And something about the combination of all of these tropes, where it's enemies to lovers and arranged marriage of convenience, like those two tropes combined, they just make me very, very happy. And I think that this was just an amazing enemies to lovers book. I rated it 4.75, and I rated it so highly solely probably because of the actual romance and the tension between the two main characters, which was just some of the best enemies to lovers that I've read in a really, really long time. I will say that one of the reasons why I didn't give it 5 stars is because personally, I think that in fantasy books, like, I think it's totally fine to make fake religious systems in fantasy books. I think that's amazing. But I think when you use real religion in fantasy books, I think that can be a little bit disrespectful at times. Like if you have one religious group in a fantasy book and they're made out to be like the bad guys, or, you're using real, extracts from a religious book in your fantasy book, I feel like that can be disrespectful at times. Like if I were an author, and I do write books, but if I were an author who was published, I wouldn't take one religious group and use them to be like the enemy in my fantasy book. I personally wouldn't do that. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't give this 5 stars. It's not even that the book felt super disrespectful or anything, but it's just that I think fake religious systems in books would work better than using real ones in fantasy books, personally. But with that being said, the romance was done so wonderfully. I really liked the setting of the book. It almost felt like, I think it was set in France. I can't tell if it was supposed to be set in real Paris or if it was like a fantasy version of Paris. I couldn't really tell. But I think the atmosphere was great. I really enjoyed both characters, Lou and Reed, and I will definitely be continuing with this series very soon. The next book that I picked up was Zodiac Academy. This is the very first book in this series, and it's a very long series, so I guess I'm just in the middle of a bunch of book series now. That's amazing for me. I love that for me. Anyways, Zodiac Academy is an urban fantasy. It is about these two twins named Darcy and Tori, who are just both kind of leading this irregular life, and one night teacher from this different realm kind of approaches them and lets them know that they are fae, that their parents were the rulers of this whole other kingdom named Solaria, and that it's time for them to head off to Zodiac Academy so that they can claim their inheritance and also just learn how to control their powers. And I really enjoyed this book. I will say that the writing style reminded me a little bit of Cassandra Clare, only I think it was more enjoyable than Cassandra Clare's writing. But it felt very Wattpad style, which is not a bad thing. Wattpad style writing is very easy to breeze through, very easy to understand. And I loved the way that the actual academy was described, the way it was written. It just sounded like the most fun school ever. And I really loved the main characters, Darcy and Tori. I will say that if I had to pick a favorite, I would pick Darcy, but I loved both of them. And this is a bully romance. I do not typically read bully romance books. I'm not opposed to them, but there's a very big difference between bully romance and enemies to lovers. Like, there's a very big difference. They're not the same. And this book was very interesting in regards to the bully romance. Basically, there are these four guys, and they are known around the school as the heirs, which basically means that each of them are expected to rule over Celeria once they graduate. But now that Darcy and Tori have come back, now the guys are feeling threatened, even though Darcy and Tori have told these guys, like, we have no interest in becoming the rulers of this kingdom. We just want to learn about ourselves and see what type of powers we have, and we don't even want to be in, you guys' way. Like, we're just trying to understand ourselves. These guys do not care. They make these girls' lives a living hell. And I just absolutely hated the majority of these guys. There was one guy, and I was in my head I was thinking, okay, he's not as bad as all the others. Maybe this could work out. And he just turned out to be a scumbag as well. And it was just very interesting to read about all of these guys who were just awful. Like, they were just awful. And I'm hoping that, there's a change, like in book 2 or book 3, where hopefully they are not as mean, because they were just like, they scared me. Like, I wasn't like swooning over them or whatever. Like, no, they scared me. I was scared for the twins. So that was very interesting to read a book like this. I've never read a bully romance or a bully romance anywhere near the level of this book. So that was interesting. But I found the overall story very fun, and I really enjoyed the main characters, and I'm very excited to see the continuation of this story in book 2. The final book that I read in May was Scythe by Neil Shusterman, and I gave this book 5 stars. I cannot believe my luck in May. Like, I found some brilliant books. Like, I am shocked and so happy. But anyways, this book is about basically this world which is dystopian, and there are these scythes who basically decide when you die, how you die, and it is just a very dictated world. And there are these two young teenagers named Citra and Rowan, and they eventually get selected to take on this scythe apprenticeship by a very well-respected scythe who kind of lets them go along with him on missions, and he kind of teaches them the importance of what a scythe does to maintain balance in this world. And you basically just see the story go on from there. And I really loved this book. I had such an amazing time with it. I think it's one of the best dystopian books I've read ever. And the plot was just so unique, and I just loved the writing style. It kept me so interested, like, all the time. And I loved the characters, Citra and Rowan. There may be like a little romance subplot going on, a little bit of a romance subplot. They're definitely rivals, and then there's like a little bit of like some romance brewing between the two of them. And I absolutely had so much fun with this book. I think that the story was really emotional at times, and it just was written so, so well. I cannot wait to get to book 2. The plot twist at the end was crazy, and yeah, I just love it so much, and I highly recommend this book, especially if you are a big dystopian or sci-fi reader. I think you will absolutely love this book. I love you guys so much, and thank you for clicking and watching this video. It means so much to me, and I hope you guys had a good time hearing my recap of all the books that I read in the month of May. I hope that this video hopefully gave you some good recommendations. And if you want to see what I'm planning to read in this month, in June, then you should totally check out my June TBR video. Please let me know what books you guys read in May, what books you're reading right now, anything bookish that you want to comment down below. Please do. Please let me know what videos you want to see from me in the future. And please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe because it really does help me out so much. And I will see you guys in my next video. And happy reading to all of you.